Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I'm your host, Randi-lee. On the show, we interview other writers and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already hit that like and subscribe button, go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode. So today we have Micheal Sholtes with us. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So where are you joining us from?
I'm in eastern Pennsylvania, a little town called Bangor.
Oh, all right. I've never been there. I've been to Pennsylvania, but
Mhm.
not there specifically. So tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. I'm currently a pastor in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Been serving as a pastor for 15 years now. I've been a Lutheran my entire life. My faith has been pretty important to me for most of my life. But I've also been dealing with clinical depression for pretty much all my life, and I've found that it's very, how do I want to say it? It's very interesting to kind of live with a strong faith, and at the same time live with a voice in my head that tells me that I'm worthless. And I've found it to be really healing to talk about it, to be open to that.
I like that. So that's our perfect segue in here. Okay. So we're gonna jump in and start your story with depression wherever makes the most sense.
Okay. It started when I was a child, and I didn't really know what it was. But as a kid, I was considered to be the whiz kid of my school. I was the smart one. But I always felt like that meant I needed to be perfect in everything. I had to do everything right. If I didn't do anything right, if I didn't do everything right, it meant I was a failure, and not just that I failed at something, but that at my core was a failure. As I grew older, that got more and more frequent, that I would have these feelings that there's something seriously wrong with me, that I should have known better if I made a mistake. Friendships and romantic relationships were always filled with this kind of angst that I have to do everything perfectly, or I've hopelessly destroyed this relationship and hurt this person forever. I even got to the point of being at the very edge of suicide a couple times in my teenage years, and every time it was because I thought I had hurt someone and that it would be better for the world if I just weren't around.
Yep. I've been there, done that with everything you're saying. It's resonating. Yep.
Sure.
Like, is this a show for everyone else or just for me?
I actually just read your book, Embracing Me, and felt the same way as I was reading it, that there was a lot of connection in our experiences.
Yeah, that means so much to me.
Yeah. So the way I often talk about my depression is I think of it as a voice that's in my head. I call it the dark voice. Yeah. And because it's a voice that is constantly telling me, you are worthless. You should have known better. That's its favorite thing to say, is you should have known better. You're supposed to be so smart. Why didn't you know better?
Yeah, mine likes to call me dumb.
Oh, yeah. And I just thought this was normal, and that this was something that people dealt with, and that that because I had such trouble dealing with it, it would be better if I would just go away. And it was after my second suicide attempt that I'll tell you a story about that. It was my freshman year in college, and I was convinced that that this was the right thing to do. I was convinced at that point that God wanted me to do this, or at the very least that God understood why this was the best thing. And so I found a tree in a park near my college that I thought would be perfect. Went down there with a bungee cord, actually, for a noose, because I didn't know how to tie a noose, and I thought a bungee cord would work. As it turns out, I don't know, but
That's probably a good thing.
because I climbed the tree and I was standing there. I wrapped the cord around my neck and started to reach up to the branch above it. And there were tears streaming down my face because there was my survival instinct was kicking in, and I really did not want to do this, but I
Yeah.
kept saying, I know I'm supposed to do this. I know I have to do this. And I
Oh
kept thinking that
no.
voice talking to me was the voice of God saying, you're right. This is the best thing for the world.
Oh
And I
no.
prayed for a sign. I said, God, give me the strength to do this. And then suddenly it was nighttime, and suddenly I saw this light shine in the distance.
Hmm.
And I think in reality or whatever, it was probably just someone turning on their porch light, or
Yeah.
a street lamp coming on or something like that. But to me in that moment, it was the Star of Bethlehem. It was a light telling me, no, you've misunderstood me. Don't do this. I want you to come down from the tree now.
Oh, I
Um,
like that.
yeah, it was an amazing experience. So I did. That's why I don't know if a bungee cord would work, which, like you said, is a good
Good.
thing.
Good.
But I climbed down and I just went back to my dorm and went to bed, and I didn't tell anybody about it. Until a couple days later, I was feeling physically sick, like I had a really bad cold or a flu or something, and I had heard
Okay.
that mono was going around the campus at the time. So
I
I
had
went down
mono
to the.
once
Oh, did really?
in grade 9. It was awful. I have no idea where I got it from. Nobody else I knew had it. So I don't know. But I was off of school for like a month, an
Oh my.
entire month. It was the worst, the absolute worst. And my mom's like, nobody can come over, right? Because it's
Yeah.
so catching. She's like, you are quarantined. Like, I don't even want to go near you.
It's like the original COVID.
Right. Yes, just it didn't spread quite as
Yeah.
quickly as COVID. I've had that twice too.
Oh, yuck. Yuck.
Anyways,
Yeah. So I was feeling pretty crappy physically. And so I went to the student health center thinking I'd get, some medicine or something.
yeah,
And the nurse there said, I don't see anything physically wrong with you. Have you been under any stress lately? And brilliant kid that I was at the time, I said, well, I thought I had to be honest or else they wouldn't be able to help. I
yeah.
said, well, I did try and kill myself 3 days ago.
I'm
And
not I'm not laughing
no,
because
you should
like it's
laugh.
not a bad it's just funny to me because you should be honest. Without being honest, they can't help you. But like that's something I would totally do. Just be like, oh yeah, I tried to kill myself 3 days ago. Like it's
Yep.
just no big deal. I would just be like, yeah, okay.
And that's the thing is I thought it was like, oh, she'd say, oh, well, that makes sense. Here's a prescription for
Right? That
anxiety
that
pills
would
or something.
be exactly my thought process.
Nope, nope. I created the next 2 weeks of my life in that moment, because she said, stay here. I'll be right back, with this like scared look on her face. I didn't know what that was about.
I don't think too
Came
many
back.
people come and admit that they tried to do it.
So came back with the counselor who was across the hall from the health center, who led me to his office, and he started asking me questions about how I'm feeling and why I'm depressed, and I
Yep.
was really kind of annoyed at him. I said, I'm fine now. This was a few days ago, and there's nothing
Right?
wrong with
It's
me
totally in the
now.
past.
I said, can I go now? And he said, no, you actually can't go until your parents come to pick you up. Here's a phone, you can call them.
Oh, snap.
And I had
Now, were
to.
you going to school close to home?
It was about an hour from home.
Okay, not too bad. Not too
Not too bad. It wasn't like they had to get on a plane,
bad. Yeah.
but I was sitting in his office for another hour after calling my mother and saying, "Hi, you need to pick me up because I tried to kill myself," which again, I just didn't realize
Was
how
going to be a huge deal, which
was a
it
big deal.
totally is a huge deal. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
just want
Mm-hmm.
everyone listening to understand we are not minimizing this. This is
No.
true lived experience. So obviously it's not minimized. Um, as a parent though, because my son has attempted, um, it's such an awful feeling to hear, at least for me, because I also have depression. Because I felt like I had failed as a parent. Now, I don't know how your
Yeah.
parents felt, but because I also have depression, my voice in my head would say, it's your fault because you're a bad parent. And I'm like struggling with my inner demons while trying to be strong for my kid and in the hospital. And
Yeah.
whew, it is exhausting.
Yeah. And I think my parents absolutely had that. And it was also, back in the days when, this was the early 90s, and the stigma was still very strongly there.
Right.
And there was still a sense that, my mother must have raised me wrong if I turned out like this,
Right?
that she
Exactly.
had so, my parents had to really wrestle with some stuff there.
And it's like,
Um,
shh, don't tell anybody. This is a
yeah,
secret, right? Like I
yeah.
remember um feeling like my mom didn't know I was depressed as a teenager until I started writing my books. Um,
Mhm.
she didn't realize I had contemplated suicide many a times. Um, because there was this unspoken rule that you didn't speak about it,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Like in our house, my brother was in and out of trouble. He was doing drugs. My stepfather as a teenager, he was an alcoholic. And so when we would go out, and this is all you have to learn when you're a kid, right? Is when you go out and you see how your mom or your dad is acting, and my mom is acting like everything is fine. She's not telling people what's happening at home. She's not
Yeah.
asking for help or trying to learn more about addictions or alcoholism. She's pretending like everything's okay. So what do I learn? Pretend everything's
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
right? And that is late 90s, early 2000s. But that's what it was. You did not talk about it. There wasn't podcasts.
Mm-mm.
Google was still just a baby. um, so you didn't talk about it. And now that we are talking about it, I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
But it it is harder, I think, for the older generations, my mom, your parents, because there was this, you don't talk about it. Don't let
Yeah,
people know what's
absolutely.
happening in your house. It's your house, you deal with it.
Yeah. So I ended up spending 11 days in a mental hospital as a result of that. And I didn't want to go. I was
Well,
you
everything was
know,
fine, right? It was 3 days, it was fine.
everything was
Yeah, it's
fine.
fine.
But honestly, like it was during those 11 days that I finally realized, people take this seriously. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
I those were the days before cell phones, but there were a couple pay phones on the floor there that we could use during free time, and my father just gave me
And
his
they
credit card
even
and
used to
said,
be a quarter. I don't
yeah,
know what
well,
they are down there. They're 50 cents here now, but they used to be a quarter.
yeah, right. But my father gave me his credit card and said, call anybody you need to as much as you need to, because he knew I
That's
had
good.
lots of friends. And so I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time on the phone then, and I was shocked at how many friends of mine, when I would call them and told them what was going on and where I was, that they would just start crying. There was one friend who refused to talk to me for weeks afterwards because she was so upset and so angry that I didn't
Reach out.
reach out.
Okay.
And we ended up working it out,
Yeah.
and I understood where her feelings were coming from then. But
Again,
so
it's
that
that feeling of failure as a friend. Why didn't
yes,
you come reach
yes,
out to me?
yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
um so yeah, so that was the moment when I really realized this is a real problem, and this
Yeah.
is a real thing. And of course, as an 18-year-old, I thought that, well, I just got out of the hospital, I'm cured now, I'm
Right.
fine.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
But
11 days fixes
fixes
everything.
everything. But it's something that I'm still dealing with in a lot of different ways.
Mhm.
I'm now, I'm on antidepressant medication at this point. I go to regular therapy twice or every other week. I have a spiritual director I see monthly, and kind of all those things are kind of my foundation that helps me to keep moving.
Mhm.
Because I still hear that voice. That voice is still in my head. I don't think it'll ever leave me.
Isn't it so nice?
I
It's just like
know.
a little friend that you want to hate and kick out your head.
And one way I talk about it is that I don't literally hear voices like someone with schizophrenia might. It's not.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have trouble telling whether this
It's an
voice is a real
inner
person or not.
monologue of yourself. Yeah.
Right. The way I talk about it is I don't have trouble telling if it's someone else or not. I have trouble telling whether it's me or not. Because it has access to all of my memories and all of my intellect. And so it's
Mhm.
it's a really hard voice to beat.
Yeah. Yeah. I like I said, I have that voice too, so I totally get it. And it's almost like for those listening who can't wrap their head around it because they've never experienced it, it's
God bless
almost
you.
like, yes, right? Like when you watch TV, right, and you see the devil and the angel
Yeah.
on their shoulders, it's similar to that for like trying to explain it, where like the angel's like your regular who you are, right? Like your good voice, that's who you want to be. And then the devil is that depression, just constantly
Yep.
berating you,
Yep.
telling you how absolutely awful you are and stupid and ugly and fat and. So that's kind of a good way um I've used to explain it to people who when they're like, you have voices in your head.
Yeah.
Not really, no. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like your angel and devil side when you're kind of figuring life out.
And that's a good segue to talking about how faith acts in my life, because when I think
Perfect.
about the devil and angel on my shoulders, I absolutely agree with you about that the devil is that dark voice. What I interpret as that angel is the voice of God. And again, I don't hear God's voice like a prophet or schizophrenic or anything like that. But but I do kind of hear a voice that tells me you're okay. I love you. And
Yeah.
it uses the same words that I use in sermons that says, I love you because you're baptized. You tell people that it's true for you too.
Yeah.
And that's the voice that I think I heard on that night at the tree. That voice came to me as a light that night. But it's, so I often think of my experience as listening to, one voice coming in one speaker and one voice coming in the other speaker. and
Yes.
and I think of the story of the wolves.
Yes.
um
Oh, it's a good story.
yeah, do you want me to share it
Yeah,
in
yeah,
case
do it,
someone
do it.
doesn't
Just in
know it?
case anybody hasn't heard it yet. It's a really good one. So
Yeah. It's been told in a couple different ways. One of the ways I like to tell it is, there was a young child who was really struggling with feelings of anger and lashing out, and couldn't get himself under control. And he went to talk to his grandfather and said, why can't I control myself? Why can't I get rid of these feelings I don't like? And his grandfather said, within each of us, there are two wolves. One wolf is angry and spiteful and cruel and just wants to lash out and hurt people and hurt you. And the other wolf is kind and loving and compassionate and wants peace. And the kid asks, well, Grandpa, which wolf wins? And the grandfather says, the one you feed. And it's ironic in a way that it's only in the last year that story has become really, really powerful for me. That I kind of finally connect with that story, and realize that if these voices are going to be with me my whole life, and so far they have been, what I can do is choose which one to feed, and really focus more on what I believe God is telling me about my worth, about the fact that it's okay if I mess up, that I'm forgiven, and that I probably haven't ruined people's lives the way I think I have. And even if I did, there's still forgiveness available. There's still hope. I'm sorry, I can't hear you now. I don't know if that's on
I
my
put
end or
myself
yours.
on
Oh,
mute
okay, okay.
because of the story, and then I forgot to unmute.
Okay.
Um, but that's one of my biggest struggles is when you unintentionally make a mistake, because I
Yep.
mean, nobody intentionally makes a mistake. And then I feel completely worthless. I screwed it up. I screwed up things for other people. I made this big mess of everything. Um, and then I'm just this horrible person. That is my biggest struggle. But you're right. It's okay. We haven't
Yeah.
screwed up people. There is forgiveness out there, and we make mistakes for people. Like
Yeah.
you can't, and I write this in my book. You can't, I can't remember how I worded it in the book, but you can't know something until you've learned it. So I was referencing something that had happened when I was in college. And I didn't want to answer a question because I wasn't 100% certain I knew the answer. So I felt really stupid because I was still called on. Anyways, the story's in the book. The point of that story, though, is that why was I berating myself for not knowing an answer in a class I hadn't taken yet?
Yeah, right. And we do that in our lives all the time.
Yeah, we
We
have to be
expect.
perfect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. And we hold ourselves to standards that many of us don't hold other people to. At least I know I don't hold other people to that same standard.
Exactly.
I heard somebody say once that if we talk to someone else the way we talk to ourselves, they get a restraining order on us.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I've never heard it worded that way. I've always heard the you should talk to yourself the way you talk to other people because then you'd
Mm,
be nicer. But I
yeah,
like your way better because it resonates more with me. Um, to really push the fact that I am not a very nice person to myself. No, nobody would want to be friends with this little voice in my head.
mm-mm, mm-mm.
I don't even want to be friends with them. I've given them an eviction notice. They just won't leave. They're squatters. So I do have a question though. So because
Yeah.
you had said that was your second attempt at suicide, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what happened with the first time? Because obviously people weren't notified of it that time.
Yeah, the first time I was 16, I was in high school, and it was a complicated, bizarre situation involving my girlfriend at the time and another person. And it's actually in my book if anybody's
Oh.
interested. But the upshot of it was I was feeling those same strong feelings of guilt that I had done something terribly wrong. And I had um, an equally brilliant idea on how to do it at 16.
Oh.
No, actually, even more brilliant. There was there's a creek near my house, and there was this section of the creek called the Falls where there was this deep pool. And as kids, we all knew that the water was 10 feet deep there. It's just what it was. And there was this old trolley trestle that went over it. So I went there to the falls, tied rocks to my feet, thinking I've probably seen, in some movie,
Oh, 100%. I went straight to
that
like a mafia film. Yeah.
exactly, thinking, well, I don't know how to pour concrete on my feet, but certainly just tying some rocks that I can pick up will work fine.
Yeah.
Uh, um, yeah, I jumped off, and not only was I able to move just fine with these rocks, but the water was about 3 feet deep, as it turns out. But the
I am so
I
glad.
know I'm so bad at it.
I am laughing, but only because I'm totally picturing all of this in my head.
Yeah.
But I am so glad that it was only 3 feet deep and you were all
Yeah.
wrong about it being 10 feet and that you could freely move. Um,
But the really key thing though that I noticed was as soon as I jumped off, when there was, it was the point of no return if it had worked, I screamed out no, like I really, didn't want to do it. And so I kind of crawled out of the creek. It was probably this time of year. It was chilly. I was completely drenched and just kind of, walked home, and went in my bedroom, changed my clothes, and didn't talk about it.
okay.
And I don't think I ever told anybody about that until I was in the hospital after the second one.
Yeah.
It's
Which is good because by the sounds of it, you probably would have tried a third time.
yeah,
And hopefully,
yeah,
it would have been unsuccessful again because we don't want that to actually happen. But so glad that you had the courage, even though you didn't realize it was courage at the time. It
yeah,
was just a fact. But it takes courage in order to actually reach out for help.
Yeah.
And I think that for a lot of us, that first step of saying I need help is the hardest step. I know it was for
Absolutely.
me.
Absolutely.
It's been for a lot of people I've talked to. Just saying I need help, and you don't even have to say it to an actual person. Literally saying I need help to yourself um is probably the absolute hardest step of the entire process, because until you say that, you're never going to go get help. First off,
Hmm.
like it literally is the first step. But you're admitting that there's a problem, and because for a lot of us with depression, we need to be perfect. We need to make sure that we're never hurting anybody. We need to, right? We've talked about it already. We hold ourselves to a very high standard. So admitting that you need help is breaking that standard that you're holding yourself to, saying, I cannot be this standard. I
Yeah.
don't need to be this standard is one that we have to eventually get to. I think that one takes a lot of time to get to. But admitting that I'm not at this standard and that is a problem is so very, very hard. And then doing the hard work to realize that we don't have to hold ourselves to that standard, because we would never hold anyone to that standard of perfection,
Yeah.
is such a hard thing. And I know it in my head, and I'm saying it to everybody listening right now, but I work on it every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
have also, oh, go ahead.
no. I was actually just
Okay.
going to give it back to you.
Sure. I've also learned in my career that being open about this, in a public way, when you're a public figure, like I am, at least in a small pond,
Yes.
um, can be really powerful. When the congregation where I'm at right now, I've been there about 10 years, and I decided early on, only about 6 months into my time here, I decided I was gonna, basically come out, so to speak,
Yeah.
about living with depression, and it was during a sermon. I don't remember what the Bible readings were, or what the
Yeah.
connection was, but somehow or another, I was saying that we all deal with different things in our lives, and one of the things I deal with is depression, and I explained what depression looks like, how I experience it, and I said, if you're comfortable doing so, I invite you to call out what you struggle with. And
Oh,
I thought I
wow.
would hear maybe two or three people say something,
Yeah.
some
Maybe a few
coughs, and
crickets.
it wasn't like that. I swear, I mean, there were probably 120 people or so in worship that day, and I'd say almost half of them called something
Wow.
out. People were calling out cancer, anxiety, problems with my grandkids, and a lot of people said depression too. It was,
That's
and that was the moment when I felt like
amazing. I'm
I
getting
am welcome here.
tingles.
Not every church is like that, but I am so grateful that I'm that the church I'm at is like that. And I have had so many conversations with people about stuff they're going through, and people come to me asking for resources. I have a list of counselors in the area, and I have given that list out to dozens of people over the
That's
years,
amazing.
because they're comfortable asking me, because they know I get it.
Yeah. And if you wouldn't have done that, it, these people wouldn't come to you probably. And
Exactly. So, that's the amazing thing, is that while it is absolutely scary to tell people you need help, when you do it, it not only helps you, but it can help them as well.
mhm.
And it's really been it's really been a healing thing for me and for the congregation.
That is amazing. I know that some churches that I have visited over the years or attended, um, say that mental health is not existing.
Oh,
And that, just pray
oh,
harder,
just pray it
or
out. Yep, yep,
just
yep.
pray it out, pray it
Pray harder.
out.
You obviously, your faith isn't strong enough, because if you really
Yes,
believed, you wouldn't feel that way.
exactly. No, not at all.
No.
And so actually, the church that I had went to growing up, the youth group that
Yeah.
I say in my book literally saved my life. Um, it had its last service in the summer. because the congregation just kind of dwindled away. A lot of us that went there as youth, we moved away. So apparently the church that went in and replaced it is like pumping now. I haven't been there, but apparently it's pumping. But anyways, I went for the last service, and I can't remember exactly what was said, but during the afterwards, we were having lunch, and they had the mic up for like an open mic, share your memories of the church. And somebody had went up and said something about mental health.
Hmm.
I don't remember exactly what they said, and it wasn't negative in its entirety, but it was also not super positive.
Okay.
And so when I went up and I said, so depression does exist. I know. And I just like let it go. And I'm like, but this youth group, this church here, it literally saved my life. So, you know, sad that the church is gone. And I'll admit I had not been there in a very long time, because not that I live far, but I live far enough that it was,
Sure.
you know. And so it was just, it's so nice to be able to stand up in front of people that I have known for a very long time, and say, yeah, no, I had depression when I was here, and it's real, and you guys helped me, and thank you for that, but it's real.
Yeah.
Because there are congregations out there. There are people who preach that it's not in, you know, pray harder and that kind of thing. But my kid said it best once when he was talking, and said, well, how can somebody say that this isn't okay? And he was so I don't know if you have listened to other episodes. So my son is transgender. And so somebody he was watching on YouTube was going on about how that's very wrong, it's evil, it's all of these things. So he was feeling very, very bad about himself, and he has depression, anxiety as well. And so he said to me one day, though, he said, now, if the Bible says that God made you in his image perfectly the way he wanted you to be, how can somebody tell me that the way I feel is wrong? And I'm like, they can't. Like, you just, they can't, based on what you just said. And so that goes with depression as well. I mean,
absolutely. Yes.
And any mental illness, any way you feel, God gave me these struggles, and thank you so much. Because there was a purpose. And this is my purpose, talking to other people about it. But to tell somebody that it doesn't exist is not really a good thing at all, because then they're going to hide it and end up doing what you tried, what I thought about trying. And so we need to respect the fact that it definitely does exist. If you're totally against what I'm saying, I guess turn off the episode, and keep to yourself. But yeah, I just feel like it's so important for people to realize that one experience in one place, whether it is a church, a school, what you thought was a friend's house, one experience somewhere telling you that it is wrong to say that you have mental health, or in my son's case, transgender, whatever, does not mean that that is the only view in the world. It's the wrong view. It maybe means that that is not the place for you to be, and it's not the place that's going to help you to get through whatever struggle it is that you're going through. It's not going to help you to find coping strategies that you need in order to deal with your mental illness. And don't shut yourself away. Reach out to someone else, because there are other people out there that have experienced the same things that you have, and that want to help and want to understand you better. So don't just think that this one experience in this one place speaks for all of us, because it doesn't.
Right.
So it's my very long rant.
It's an important one.
I hope so.
And I have a 13 and an 8-year-old, and one thing that I'm really hopeful about for the generation that's grown up right now is I think they talk about this much more often than we ever did. The stigma has changed, and it's just not there among their peers. My 13-year-old who's gender fluid, actually, has, a couple years ago, actually, when I think they were like 10 at the time, said, Dad, I think I have anxiety. Can we do something about that? Can you get me to see somebody about that?
That's
And
awesome.
I was amazed, like not only did they have
Yeah.
such, presence of mind to recognize that, but also that they felt comfortable, saying, I need help. And I think you might be able to help me find that help.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, it's fantastic.
One of the reasons I started this show is because the one night, I don't know, well, he just turned 16, so at least 6 years ago, maybe longer. Um, Actually, yeah, I think he might have only been 8 at the time. Anyways, it was like the middle of the night. He's crying. He had a really bad day at school. He was bullied. Um, and he was talking about how he hated himself
Mm,
and he should just die and all of these bad things. And I thought to myself, have I not done a very good job of sharing about mental illness?
mm.
And I went, huh, I don't think I have. Because there was always this, your parents are perfect. We are
Mhm.
all knowing. We see everything. We know it all. Um, which is so not true. When
Oh
they're
my
like
gosh.
when they're like 2 and 3, you want them to think that
Yeah.
because, it's a very different world. But as they start to grow up, we have to be more real. We
Yeah.
don't know everything. We aren't perfect. And we struggle too. And so that was kind of a defining moment when I went,
Yeah.
huh, I need to get loud.
Yeah. And one of the tough things is that we do pass it on to our kids for genetically.
Yeah.
There's definitely a genetic component to it. And it's not, I don't believe my kid has anxiety, because I was a bad parent, but I do believe it's possible my kid has anxiety because I gave, the bad mental health genes to
Yeah.
them. So,
Yeah. There is genetic components
which
to
which
things.
means I need to be, as helpful a parent as I can. And my parents were supportive and my parents were loving, but they just didn't know what to
Exactly.
do. And I didn't know what was going on. But today's different. I think I know a lot more than my parents did about mental illness. And I
Yeah.
think my kid knows a lot more than I did at that age too.
I
So
think my kid knows a lot more than I know now, even.
yeah, right.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more talked about like on TV
Yeah.
shows.
Yeah.
And actually my husband and I, we just went to the mall on the weekend and our local children's mental health organization set up a shop in the not a shop, but like a little pop-up
Yeah. Like a
drop-in clinic
kiosk.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Like a drop-in clinic thing
Okay.
during the week. And on the one wall, they've put all of these beautiful messages. So it was like the one thing was like the do's and don'ts, like different words. And the one was like, I am so stupid.
Mm.
Don't say that, but say, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Right. And just
Yeah.
different lines like that. And then nice words of, you're beautiful. I'm whatever. Um, that was never a thing back in the
No.
90s, early 2000s. Like,
Mm.
no, that wasn't a thing. But now it's very much in the face. It's like I said, it's a huge wall in the mall that has that messaging out there to everybody, specifically the youth, just because that's who put it up, but for everybody, really.
And I think one of the troubles, one of the unfortunate side effects of that, though, is I think we're facing, at least in the States, a real shortage of clinicians. It's really,
Mm,
it can be,
yes.
I remember when I first wanted to get on meds, I found it was a 6-month wait to get a psychiatrist, but it was easy to get, into talk counseling, into,
Yeah.
talk therapy. It's hard to get into talk therapy now because there's just, and I think it's partially because so many people recognize they need it and are reaching out, which is a good thing,
Yes.
but we don't have the resources, to get everybody into the system as well right now.
Oh yes. The same thing here in Canada. Because you're right. I don't think it's about people having retired from the profession, more that more people are recognizing they need the help
I
from
think
them.
so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And the levels haven't equaled out to match the need. That supply and demand thing.
So if anyone listening is thinking about it as a career, please go do it because we
Yeah,
need
we
we
need
need
a
good counselors. We need good therapists.
yes. And
Yeah, and
I've heard that
psychiatrists.
I've heard that message from various countries of guests that I have interviewed. So it's not just a North American thing. It is kind of a worldwide thing, which is why I think you're right. It's that people are recognizing that they need the help. They're recognizing that it's okay to get the help, and they're recognizing that that is the type of help that is best, as opposed to I'm going to use my brother as an example, because he's the one I'm writing my next book about. He at one point knew he needed help for anxiety, and instead of seeking talk therapy, he sought illegal drugs.
Okay.
Which ended very poorly for him. And so, by realizing what the positive coping strategy might be, or the positive way of dealing with this, we do need more clinicians. We need more places that are available for people to talk to them. Because if not, then we start medicating in ways that end potentially in death. We end up maybe over shopping, overspending to make us feel better, and then you're in a lot of debt, gambling, any of those addictions that prevent us from really living a really super happy life because you're too busy trying to pay off the debt that you accumulated, or whatever it happens to be. So tell us, what piece of advice, I love asking this question, what piece of advice you would give somebody who is struggling to admit to themselves that there is maybe a little problem?
Everybody is screwed up in some way or another. Everybody. And it's okay that we are. And some of us need help with a physical ailment we have. Some of us need help with an addiction we have. Some of us need help with just needing a leg up to get where we want to be. And some of us need help with a mental illness. And it's not a sign of bad character. It's not a sign of sin. It's not a sign of any punishment. It's just, we're living in a world that bad things happen. And if that happened to you, if you've got something wrong in your brain chemistry, that's okay. And there's help available. And I really think that the core of help for at least for depression is talking. I think lots of other things are helpful too. I think medication is really important and can help. I think prayer is really important and can help. I keep hearing things about ketamine and about this magnetic treatment that's available. That stuff might help too. But I think at the core, you have to be talking to somebody, because that enables you to get your feelings out in a way that you might not have before. And I don't know about you, but in my experience, I find that when I get my words out, whether it's talking or writing, and that's why writing is so important to me. Yes. When I get my words out in one way or another, suddenly I realize my thoughts are not quite what I thought they were. I always think that I think in English, but when I write or say something that to kind of explain why I'm feeling so twisted and messed up inside, as I get it out, I realize that is not as screwed up as I thought it was. That's actually really, I understand where this is coming from, and I understand what I can do with this, because I think the thoughts in my head are just in this garbled, self-absorbed, cruel language that I speak to myself. But getting it out just starts the process of kind of teasing what it's really all about. And in my experience, I find it helpful to talk or write with someone listening. I think it's helpful to have a counselor who can, I think a good counselor doesn't do too much in the way of direction, but is a really good mirror and asks really good questions to help you
Oh my
dive
goodness.
in.
Yes, and it's the worst.
Yeah, right.
The
It's
worst
hard
because
work.
it's
It's
so
hard
good.
work.
It is
Yeah.
so hard. I remember when I first went to my psychologist, and very good listener. I really like her. Um, but then she would say things like, I'll give you an actual example. I went in because I had to tell um my boss, this is many years ago, I had to tell my boss that the hours I was working were too much. I couldn't do it all. And I thought this person was going to absolutely hate me, maybe fire me, maybe yell at me. It was going to be just the absolute worst. And so I'm telling her all of this. And she goes, "Okay, so what evidence do you have of this?" Well, I don't have any. Like, I don't have any. Okay. Okay.
But it's really loud.
Right?
The voice is really loud.
So loud. I'm like, I don't have any. And she goes, "Okay. Um, so has she ever yelled at you before?" Well, no. Okay. So is that thought accurate? Okay, no. But like, until she said that to
Yeah.
me, I was adamant that it was going to be a huge blow up. It was going to be awful. And just that simple. What's your evidence? So they ask just those really simple questions. And to finish the story, no, I did not get yelled at after I had the conversation. It was a very good
Good.
conversation, very lovely.
And
But
I think, and that's a question that you think, well, how hard is that? I could ask myself that question, but we don't ask
exactly,
ourselves that question.
I have
We need
started to
somebody to
now.
do that.
I've
Yeah,
started to now because of therapy.
right, right.
But beforehand, and it wasn't like she asked me that one time and it immediately stuck. Oh, no, no, no. After weeks of doing this with various problems and asking that question in various ways, what's the fact? Where's the evidence? Has this happened in the past? Now I have started, and it's not all the time,
Mhm.
but when I catch myself and I stop and go, "Hey, wait, is this a fact? Is this true of the past?" No. Okay. I can move on. Doesn't happen all the time. And it only is because of many sessions of therapy.
Yep, yep. It's hard work, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely worth it.
Yeah. But you're right. It's one of those, oh, I could ask myself that. You could have, but you didn't. And yeah, I think it's one of the hardest things that I have ever done. Way harder than going to college, way harder
Mhm.
harder than university, way harder than pushing out a baby. Um, it just is,
Yeah,
because you can't get out of it, right? You can't
right.
ask somebody else the answer. They are asking you the answer because we have the answers in us most of the time. And Grant, she definitely taught me a lot of other coping strategies I hadn't thought
Mhm.
of before. It's not like you come in with all of the knowledge and she has to pick it out. They do teach you different strategies, but ultimately, you are the one having to do the work. They are just guiding you. And when you
Yep.
find that right person that guides you without telling you, it's amazing. And bring a box of tissues.
Yeah. And one thing
Um,
that took me a long time to learn is that knowing about it isn't enough. I often think, this is a brain issue. So if I just, okay, yeah, I get it. I understand, that I'm a better person than I think I am. I understand that I can just breathe deep and that'll help. Now that I understand that, everything's fine. Well, that's like me saying, and it took me so long to realize this, that's like me saying, I just plotted on Google Maps a 26-mile course. I understand how to run this marathon. I don't have to actually do it. Oh, okay, but you haven't done it, and it's not going to help you get in shape by
yes,
by
yes.
thinking about it. And that, and the same thing is true with with our mental health.
Yeah,
Is you got to exercise, you got to you know
do the work.
do the work, and it's a daily, it's not a daily grind, but it's a daily responsibility.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, any last thoughts before I ask you about your book?
One thing I was hoping to bring up, you
Yeah.
said something before about how you feel like there's a reason why or the not a reason, but you said a purpose, I think,
Purpose,
for
yes.
that you have. And one way I often think about that is from scripture. It's Paul in his letters talks a couple times about having a what he calls a thorn, that he says I have this thorn that causes me great distress. And scholars have guessed over the centuries what that thorn might have been. Some people think he was epileptic, some people think all kinds of different things, but he never identifies what it is. He just says I have this thorn that causes me great distress, and I've asked God 3 times to take it away from me, and every time the answer has been, my strength is enough, and my strength is found in your weakness. And that's kind of how I think of my depression sometimes. Not that God gave it to me to teach somebody something or for any reason, but that because I have that, it's my thorn that that I that God can use for really good things. I think conversations like this, and conversations I've had at church. I've been able to be stronger because of this weakness. So that's kind of where where it all comes together for me.
I like that. So tell us about what you've written.
Sure. I recently published a book called Dark Water. The subtitle is A Pastor's Memoir of Depression and Faith, which isn't a very poetic subtitle, but it's pretty,
It's pointed.
it's pointed. Yeah. I mean, you can
Oh,
tell what it's about. It is the story of my life to date. It's I've kind of been telling an abridged version of it throughout this interview.
yeah.
It's got stories of my suicide attempts. It's got stories of talking about this in church. It's got some
A lot more
dialogues.
info than just here, so go read it.
Absolutely. There's a lot of stuff we didn't talk about here that's in there. Some dialogues between me and the voices that I hear, as well as I think it's brutally honest. I had to change a lot of names because I didn't want to be as honest with other people's
Yeah.
lives, but the stories are 100% true. And I tell it exactly how I was feeling at the time, but at the same time there's a lot of hope in there because I can see that there is there is hope at the end of the day. There is that light that shines in the distance. And I have found just talking about the book and sharing it with people has been another step in this journey of of opening this up. I think I'm trying to break down the stigma and at the same time offer hope to people, and I think the book does that. So yeah.
Yeah. I like that. That is awesome. And so where do people get a hold of it?
Sure. It's available at Amazon.com, Kindle version and print version. It's also, at Barnes and Noble and other online retailers. Not really on the shelves, but you can certainly go and request it at your favorite, brick and mortar store, and they can get it for you. If you'd like to see more information about it, you can also go to my website, which is thescholtes.com. That's TheScholtes.com. There is some more information about the book, as well as a blog that I update regularly, and a weekly newsletter I send out that talks about the intersection of mental illness and faith.
That's awesome. I like that. Actually, I'm co-writing a book with somebody, and our version of like our mental health and how we identify with stories in the Bible. So
Oh, wonderful. I
yes,
look forward
yes,
to reading that. Yeah.
yes. It's a work in progress right now,
Mhm,
but it's
mhm.
coming along. So yeah. That's the first time that I've announced it on the show. So there you go. So, and where do people follow you?
I'm on Facebook at Dark Water Author, just one word. I'm also on Twitter, but not very active there, at the same
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 here.
handle, Dark Water Author. So, but mostly Facebook, or go to my website and sign up for the newsletter would be another good way.
Do it. Awesome. Thank you so much. And we're going to throw those links down in the description below so everyone can very easily find your book. Sounds like it is a wealth of information. And I mean, we already have a glimpse of what the story will be. So let's get the details and read the book. Okay. All right. Thank you, Micheal, so much for being on the show.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
As always, thank you so much for the amazing guests that we have on the show. Be sure to check out their links down in the description below. If you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch store. We've got some very cool things on there. That's my favorite. Sorry, I'm busy ending the stigma. But there's some other very cool designs. 10% of the proceeds always goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at RB Media because we have some great new shows coming up and you never want to miss any of those episodes. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Bye!